It was unlike anything the Duggars had ever encountered on this Sunday. The environment was naturally brimming with activity, the constant hum of housework, the sound of kids playing, and the sound of food being cleaned. However, the house was as quiet as if it were wrapped in a thick blanket today. Even the sound of the hall clock was louder than usual. A sense of fear was evoked by the dim, gloomy light that came through the draperies. Michelle Duggar had a steaming cup of coffee in her hand as she leaned over the sink. It was as if she was looking into space and seeing nothing. Jim Bob sat with his elbows on his knees, crouching on the couch with his fingers clenched like a prayer. For several minutes, they were quiet. The only sound in the room was the buzz of the ceiling fan. Gently, Janna Duggar walked upstairs to the comfortable bedroom at the end of the hallway. Josie Duggar was sweating and pallid as she lay on her bed with the drapes half shut and a dim glow shining through. Her little breasts were swaying erratically. The lively and exuberant oldest daughter looked as frail as a candle blowing in the wind. After soaking a damp towel in cold water, Janna sat down beside her and gently laid it over Joe's forehead. Janna softly, "You'll be fine, Josie. Hold on a minute." "Excellent." Josie's lips were slightly apart, and her voice was shaking. "I'm freezing, Josie and Janna." Janna was devastated by the news. She pulled the blanket in closer, brushed a hair from her sister's head, and caressed her face. Michelle entered quietly and saw her youngest child shaking beneath the covers, tears welling up in her eyes. She reached out and took Jose's hand. "I was hot." "Hi, Michelle." "She's getting hot again, my goodness." Jim Bob's voice echoed from the lower basement. "Do we need to call the doctor again?" Michelle finally nodded in agreement. "Please get in touch with Dr. Peters. It's getting worse, so get on his case." The rest of the family slowly gathered in the living room while Jim Bob made the call. One by one, the Duggar family's children came out. While some were holding hands, others were crying. The mood at the formerly bustling residence was akin to a hospital waiting room. Fearful to speak, Jennifer and even little Jordan sat in silence. It was later that day that Jeremy and Jinger arrived after hours of driving from Texas. The moment her mother saw Jinger, she jumped into her arms. "Jinger is crying. Is she okay, Mom?" "I don't know how long Michelle, my sweetheart, will put up a fight." The weather outdoors seemed to reflect their fear. Black clouds began to build over the sky as soft rain began to fall, tapping softly against the windows. Michelle was by Joe's side the whole time that tragic night. Jim Bob offered her a blanket, but she did not move. Janice prayed softly while she sat in the rocking chair at the window and looked out at the rain. She would occasionally look over and watch her mother's lip movements. "I'm praying, too." At 11:48 p.m., Jose's fever rose once more. Her rambling was accompanied by unsteady breathing. Out of panic, Michelle called Jim Bob. "Something's wrong," she insisted. In an instant, Jim Bob, Janna, and Jinger ran upstairs. Dr. Peters was trying to advise them on the other end of the speakerphone. "Reduce her body temperature gently. Relax. Make sure she consumes plenty water." Meanwhile, Michelle's own pounding heart was so loud that she could barely hear his speak. "Michelle is crying. She's losing her grip on her. Jim Bob, please do something." Jim Bob's voice trembled. "She will not abandon us." That was it. He squatted by the bedside and took Jose's hand in his. Her tiny fingers did not respond very much. The house was filled with prayers, cries, and the quiet hum of a child struggling for their life. After what felt like hours, Jose's breathing even stabilized a little. Her body temperature dropped slightly, and she started to relax. Michelle sagged on Jim Bob's shoulder, weak and unsteady. Janna closed her eyes and murmured a broken, "Thank you, God." On a deeper level, however, everyone understood that this was not over. There was a darker force approaching. Jose's illness was anything but normal. It was the beginning of an extraordinary task that would test the strength of the Duggar family. The camera shows the darkened house as seen through the small bedroom window. The storm is still going fierce outside. From Jose's room a faint glow comes. The brittle glimmer of hope amid a storm. The rain continued during the night. Jim, Bob, and Michelle decided to take Josie to the hospital at around 2 in the morning. They were rushing to the hospital when thunder shook the sky like a pulse and lightning flashed across the empty road. Josie was in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket, her head resting on Michelle's knee. She had a light complexion and breathed shallowly, which made each breath sound weaker. Holding Josie's tiny hand, Janna sat beside her mother and said in hushed tones, "Stay with us. Please stay with us." Michelle's low-volume sobs and the sound of the windshield wipers were the only sounds coming from inside the car. Jim had Bob gaze straight ahead along the pitch-black road, but tears were frequently obscuring his vision. As he told himself, "Not at all. Once more. My daughter is not you." As soon as they arrived at the hospital, nurses quickly moved the stretcher forward. Michelle held Josie's hand for dear life as they drove to the hospital department. The corridor was illuminated by numerous bright lights, and the air was thick with the smell of disinfectant. Ruthless, cold, and impersonal. Dr. Peters welcomed them to the entrance. His expression was serious but calm. "We will do everything we can, Dr. Peters. Despite her fragility, she is a powerful combatant." Michelle started crying uncontrollably. "You know, she's fought all her life." The family waited outside the emergency ward. Minutes seemed to drag for forever. Janna bit her lip and fought back tears as she walked up and down the hallway. Jinger sat beside Michelle and put her head on her mother's shoulder as she prayed in private. The bleep on Josie's heart monitor was followed immediately by a deceleration. One of the nurses called the doctor. The door of the ward slammed. Through the narrow window, the family could only watch the doctors hurrying around her. Michelle grasped Jim Bob by the arm with shaking hands. Michelle was seized with anxiety. "What's happening? Are they doing something bad?" Jim Bob, gently. "They're helping her, my sweetheart. There is no other option." A nurse appeared shortly after, prone to a calm face, but a firm tone of speech. "Nurse, the patient is stable right now. Although we were able to lower her fever, she is still in severe condition." The family exhaled nervously, feeling a surge of relief. Michelle sobbed silently into Jim Bob's chest as he hugged her. Janna leaned her head against the wall and whispered, "Thank you, Lord." Time flew by. The rain turned to a light drizzle outside. The clock on the wall indicated that it was past 5 in the morning. Now, the corridor was mostly empty except for the Duggars. A low-volume buzzing sound came from the fluorescent lights overhead. Michelle went inside Josie's room after receiving the all-clear from the nurses. The sight made her heart ache. Her young child was hooked up to 4 lines, and a cardiac monitor beside her bed flashed slowly. "Michelle, you're so strong, Julie," she whispered softly as she took Josie's hand. "You've always been strong. Remember how everyone was afraid you wouldn't survive because you were born too soon? You did. Indeed. You refuted what they said." Josie's eyes flickered open for a moment as she moved ever so little. Weakly, "Josh. I'm tired, honey." "Michelle, I'm feeling too much." "I know, sweetheart. Now go to bed." "Don't worry, we're with you." Janna sat outside the room with Jim Bob. He said nothing. "Jim Bob, I promised God at the time of Josie's birth that I would always treasure her. I feel like I didn't measure up, Janna, and I apologize now." "Dad, you succeeded. You finished every mission. Everybody has." Jim Bob, though, said nothing. He was constantly worried that he had missed some important event, as seen by his glassy eyes. Despite his best efforts, he never managed to say, "I love you." One by one, relatives began arriving at the hospital. Ben and Jessa brought coffee for everyone. Joy and Austin also arrived with tears in their eyes. Josh and Anna arrived silently, avoiding eye contact, because they were as broken on the inside as everyone else. By dawn, the waiting area was completely occupied. Siblings whispering, hugging, and praying. Following a protracted absence, the Duggar family came together in one location, united not by faith or celebrity, but rather by their mutual fear of losing their cherished youngest child. Dr. Peters returned about 8 in the morning with some news. "She is stable right now, Dr. Peters, although she is physically exhausted. We are doing more testing to identify the cause of this unexpected infection. It could be a virus or something else completely." Jinger was troubled by something else. "Tell me what you mean." "My name is Dr. Since we won't know until we receive the findings, Peters, I want you to be prepared. There may be other symptoms besides a temperature." Michelle felt her face heat. Not just a temperature either. The words echoed in her head like a curse. She turned her eyes to the hospital window as the rising sun struggled fiercely against the dark heavens. Her mind was filled with anxieties. When the hospital fell silent that evening, Janet took a seat beside Josie again. The fragile monitor steadily and softly beeped. Janna reached into her bag and took out an old photo. The 19 siblings may be seen smiling in front of the ancestral home in a photo. Infant is held in the arms of Michelle and Josie. Janna whispers gently, "You brought all of us together back then, and now you're doing it again." with a single tear running down her cheek. She squeezed Josie's fist even harder. A dim moonlight crept through the air from the hospital window. A flicker of hope was like a flame in the dark on the inside. But something was changing. Deep within Josie's frail body, something was beginning to spread that the physicians had not noticed. Silent, unseen, and menacing. The narrator's voice echoed softly as the camera slowly descended from the hospital window. A storm's termination does not always mean that the rain will stop. Sometimes its form is the only thing that changes. Soft daylight streamed into the hospital room as morning broke. The machines beeped nonstop beside Josie's bed. Every sound reverberates around the room like a fragile heartbeat. Michelle was the only one who had slept all night. Even with her disheveled hair and swollen eyes, she stuck by Josie's side. She gripped her hand as if losing her child would be the end of the world. Jim Bob prayed quietly while sitting in a corner chair with his head down. Every few minutes, he would check to see if the screen was still beeping. Johannah and Jinger stood at the door, whispering softly to their younger siblings. They waited for news. At 9:30 a.m., the door opened silently. With a folder slung over his shoulder, Dr. Peters entered. He moved with purpose and solemnity. The whole room fell silent in a moment. Michelle's heartbeat quickened.